Jesus was born, he was untouched. The virgin is pure and has been untouched. Because when you begin to look at that book that I told you about, you will see that Jesus was walking one day. And there was a sister that looked real fine, just like you. And when she was walking, Jesus got caught up. See, because Jesus had to go through all the ways of life too, just like you all. He got caught up because of the music and the beauty of this sister. And Jesus said, man, let me go and get myself together. So all of us have to go through all the ways of life. We all have certain characters in us. And we got to get these things out of us to be able to be one with our Father God Allah. Islam. If you have race pride and love your race, join the Moorish Science Temple of America and become a part of this divine movement. Then you'll have power to redeem your race because you'll know who you are and who your forefathers were. Because where there's unity, there's strength. Together we stand and divided we fall. Come, good people, because the Prophet Noble Drew Ali sent to redeem this nation from mental slavery, which you now have need each and every one of you who think that your conditions can be better. This is a field open to strong men and women to uplift the nation and take your place in the affairs of men. If the European and other nations are helping him, why not you? It is your problem. The Negro problem is being solved only as it can, and that is through the Moorish National Divine Movement. If you have a nation, you must have a free national name in order to be recognized by this nation as an American citizen. This is what was meant when it was said, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. At this time, I'd like to recite the Moorish American prayer, the source from which I draw my strength. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. First off, I'd like to rise, circling the camel's hump, which symbolizes endurance, giving praise to Allah, the author, the creator, the governor of the world, almighty, eternal, and incomprehensible, the one who stretched forth the heaven with his hands, who have described with his fingers the courses of the stars, who set its bounds to the ocean that it cannot pass, and said to the stormy winds, be still. I'd like to give honor to the forerunner to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, Marcus Mosai Garvey. I'd like to give honor to all literature pertaining to Islam in the Moorish Science Temple of America. I'd like to give honor to our two flags, the flag of our origin and the flag of our birth. And honor to our charter that gives us the right to function in these United States and throughout the world without molestation or ridicule of any kind. I'd like to give honor to the Moorish Holy Quran, the book on which we draw our strength. And last but not least, I'd like to give a special honor to the members of Temple 2 here in Portland, Oregon, for their wills and their ways. I'd like to give honor to Brother Elijah Hassan, because if it wasn't for him, the Moorish Voice wouldn't go on. I'd like to give a special honor to Open Signal here for giving the Moorish Voice a platform to be able to come and talk about the last prophet in these days and times. Because when I finish talking here today, you'll find out that Noble Drew Ali been here a long time. And he was here before a lot of those that you think wasn't here. But before I do all of that, I want to read from the Moorish Holy Quran. And as I read from the Moorish Holy Quran, the first thing I'm going to read is from page 3. And page 3 reads on this wise. It says, know thyself and thy Father, God Allah. The genealogy of Jesus, with 18 years of the events, life, works, and teachings in India, Europe, and Africa. These events occurred before he was 30 years of age. These secret lessons are for all those who love Jesus and desire to know about his life, works, and teachings. And I'm going to stop right here before I move on, because I was with some Moorish Americans the other day in the last couple of months, and they keep telling me that they don't understand why Noble Drew Ali would use Jesus because there's no J in Hebrew. Who said it was? Drew Ali is a professor of the Egyptian adapt. So we're going back to hieroglyphics. And as we go back to hieroglyphics, we're going back to when the handwriting was on the wall. And when you look at the alphabets of hieroglyphics, you will see the J. Dear readers, do not falsely use these lessons. They are for good, peace, and happiness for all those that love Jesus. Dear mothers, teach these lessons to your little ones that they may learn to love instead of hate. Dear fathers, by these lessons you can set your house in order and your children will learn to love instead of hate. The lessons of this pamphlet are not for sale, but for the sake of humanity, as I am a prophet and the servant is worthy of his hire. You can receive this pamphlet at expense. The reason these lessons have not been known is because the Muslims of India, Egypt, and Palestine had these secrets and kept them back from the outside world. And when the time appointed by Allah, they loosened up the keys and freed these secrets. And for the first time in ages, have these secrets been delivered in the hands of the Muslims of America. All authority and rights of this publishing of this pamphlet of 1927 by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. The industrious acts of the Muslims of Northwest and Southwest Africa. These are the Moabites, Hamathites, and Canaanites, who were driven out of the land of Canaan by Joshua and received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle in that portion of Egypt. In later years, they formed themselves kingdoms. These kingdoms were called this day Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli, etc. Thus, we just had a reading of the Moorish Holy Quran, divinely prepared by the Holy Prophet Noble Drew Ali. When you look in the Bible, and as we look in the Bible, they talked about the book of the seven seals, that none was able to open and read from its sacred pages the messages of purity and love. And in this book right here is the 18 years that's missing in your Holy Bible, because they talk about Jesus when he was 12, and they don't talk about him no more until he was 33. And these are the 18 years that's missing in the Holy Bible. So before I get into my subject matter, I want to talk about this for a little while. I want to talk about Jesus. I want to talk about Jesus because the last 3 or 4 weeks here in Portland, Oregon, Temple 2 have been hosting a lot of different Moors from a lot of different groups with a lot of different thought patterns. And one of the things that they say when they come about is that they is in disagreement with Noble Drew Ali when he bought us a religion. I don't have no problem with that, because there's no compulsion in religion. There's no compulsion in Islam for the visitors. But once you become a member, then there are compulsion, and you got to live according to the law of God through the prophet Noble Drew Ali. So now, if a person don't like religion, and Drew Ali told us that our religion is Islamism, and Islamism is the doctrine. And when I get into my lesson today, I'm going to talk about that because I want to talk about two brothers. I want to talk about two brothers today that was instrumental in some of my growth and my development here in the Moorish Science Temple of America. One of the brothers that I want to talk about is Brother R. Loveville. R. Loveville just passed. And when he passed, I posted something, and I said that there's a leak in this building. And when I think about Brother R. Loveville, I go back with him to, I think we met in 1975. And the reason why that we got so close is because when I met him was the time that brothers and brothers was coming out of Lawton, Virginia, coming into the federal system. And when they did that, they had the Prophet Noble Drew Ali with them. But at that time, the people that was in control was Dr. R. Bey and Sister Christina Price Bey. They was ruling that system. And I loved it from the beginning, and I loved it to the end. Now let me explain to you what I'm talking about. First thing I want to do is go into this Moorish Quran. And the Moorish Quran, they was talking about Jesus was in a tomb. And they say this tomb that Jesus was in, they say Jesus took this mighty stone that was at the door of the tomb. But what Jesus did with this mighty stone, he cast it into a brook as though it was a pebble. So now when I come into the Moorish Science Temple of America and get this understanding, say the tomb, that what it was, the pebble and the stone was an illusion. Because what you and I think that is so hard for us to overcome. See, because in this book there's the 18 years missing, but then there also are the 5 folds of man. All of us have certain folds in our life. And when I talk to you today about this brother R. Loveville and this brother R. German Bey, you will see that these 5 folds that these brothers had, they took the stone that was at the tomb of their own mind. And what they thought was a big tomb, they just say, get away from me, all tempting thoughts. And that tomb became a pebble. And they took the pebble and threw it in a brook. So when we look at these teachings of the Moorish Science Temple of America and Noble Drew Ali book, it's the same thing that you might find in the church, but the understanding is different because the gifts of the understanding are the treasures of Allah. And he appointed to everyone his portion in what measure seemeth good unto himself. So now we're into the thought. So now let me begin my subject matter. You know, when I first joined the Moorish Science Temple, I was already a master in the Bible. A lot of people didn't know that in my associations, but I was already 2 years old. My mother had me in the Bible and had me studying, talking about I'm gonna be some kind of leader, a Christian minister or something, but God had something else in store. So when I become in the Moorish Science Temple of America, I was given 101 questions. And in these 101 questions, it told me, said, will you give in brief the line genealogy through which Jesus came? And the answer is, some of the great fathers through which Jesus came are Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary. Now, these sound like something that they talk. So now I come to find out that those names that I just called was brothers and sisters that was a part of the bloodline of you and me. This is why when you begin to look at the Vatican and see what year the Vatican was formed, the Vatican was formed in 1929. And the reason why the Vatican was formed in 1929, because it wasn't until 1928 when they got the spiritual signs. When Noble Drew Ali in 1928 in the Moorish Science Temple of America, then they was able to take that same paperwork and use it to make it better for themselves. This is why Noble Drew Ali say it's for your earthly and your divine salvation. Some people have an earthly and a divine salvation, and some people only have an earthly salvation. And those that only have an earthly salvation is those that took my Jesus, buried my Jesus in Vatican Square, took on his name. Now they got my Jesus looking like Ricky Nelson and Charleston Heston. So now you done stole my Jesus. You done took all these secret organizations and took my forefathers and made them a part. Let me stop here for a minute. In the last 6 months, after this great brother we know joined the Masonic Order, I don't know why he joined it, but I know that every secret society have passwords, and all of their passwords is your father and your mother. So now we're going to look at Sister Ruth, because Ruth was a Moabite. And Noble Drew Ali say Boaz by Ruth and Joseph by Mary. So when you say Boaz by Ruth and Joseph by Mary, those two times we had to come back through the door through the woman. And when we came through the door through the woman by Boaz and Ruth and Joseph and Mary, first of all, the Moors was a dead people. They said that the Moors was a dead people and that Ruth's husband died. And they said Ruth's husband died and Ruth became a widow. But I come to find out that if I'm married and my wife died, or I die, then my wife become a widow. Because if you are not conscious, if you don't have a nationality, if you're not honoring your father and your mother that your days may be longer upon the earth, which the Lord thy God, Allah, has given thee, then your wife is dead. Your wife has become a widow. So Ruth's husband died, if you could look at it physically, or you could look at it spiritually. But when Ruth's husband died, she married a brother named Boaz. And Boaz and Ruth had a lot of children. And the children that we hear, like Obed and Jesse and King David and Solomon, we hear his names. And we hear a lot of people as we talk about this name, because in the book, Solomon and David said the 23rd Psalm. And they said, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. And when everybody talking about the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want today, they looking at Jesus. But Drew Ali said something great far through which Jesus came. He said Abraham, he said Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary, meaning that when Solomon wrote the Psalms, when David wrote the Psalms, that means that Jesus wasn't even born yet. Because if it say Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and then Joseph by Mary, that means Jesus came a little later. But when you begin to talk about the house of David, you're talking about a bloodline. You're talking about the royal bloodline. Now you have a lot of other people today say this is the royal family over here, this is the royal blood over there, but the royal family come out the house of David, which are Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary. And I feel so good about them. They got a Super Bowl going on now. And when you look up in the banners everywhere, you see all of the championships up in the sky. But when you look in the Moorish temple, we call our forefathers, then you see our trophies. You see everything that we had. So what I want to do right now is give you another gift. Because most of my family's in the church. And I was in D.C. last time I was in D.C., and my nephew wear a collar around his neck. So I asked him something that we've been talking about since that brother took the order. I asked him who was Joaquin. And he didn't know who Joaquin was. And I asked him who was Anna. He didn't know who Anna was. And the reason why you don't know anything about Joaquin, and the reason why you don't know anything about Anna, is because all these secret orders, most of the preachers is in the church. And being that most of the preachers is in the church, they can't call that name. They can't call the name of Joaquin because there was two pillars. And the two pillars that the Masonic order look at in the Temple of Solomon, which is the flag of Solomon, they are Joaquin and they are Boaz. And it's strange because it's Boaz by Ruth and Joseph by Mary. So when you begin to talk about Joaquin and Boaz, you're talking about Ruth, grandparents, was Jacqueline. And Boaz is the one that married Ruth and made Ruth come back to be the truth. And through that union, humanity came. See, because when the book say, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be longer upon the earth land, which the Lord thy God Allah has given thee. Who is the Father? The Father is the great God Allah. And who is the mother? The Mother Earth. So now we was crying in the wilderness here in America, because we had failed through the advent of slavery. We lost our nationality. We lost our divine creed. And we called Allah to send us somebody to redeem us from that which was lost. Because before the advent of Prophet Noble Drew Ali, you and I of Asiatic descent had no place on earth. We had no place on earth because we didn't have a nationality. And in this government, it says that did not you have a national name when first brought to these shores in the early part of the 17th century? If so, what was it? We was Moorish. You remember we was in Spain? We were in Spain in 711, came out in 1492. We went into Spain as Moors. But we came out as Negro, colored, and black. So now we talking about the slave name. The slave name ain't Johnson. The slave name ain't Smith. The slave name is not Williams. And it sure can't be Lynch, because Merrill Lynch was bullish on America, and Willie Lynch taught them chumps how to deal with the slaves. So we're talking about the slave trade now, and we're talking about slave names. The slave name is Negro, colored, and black. And a lot of people today is glorifying the name black. But when I come up, if you call somebody black, you better know how to fight, because truth don't change. They tried to call the Chinese yellow. Older man. We what our forefathers were. We tried to call the Canaanites red. We are what our forefathers were. They said, Lynch-Bey, you Negro. I said, yeah. You color. I said, yeah. You black. I said, yeah. But you know, St. Patrick's Day is coming. And in St. Patrick's Day, all of those of Irish descent wear green. They have a new year now coming up, which is the Japanese New Year and the Chinese New Year. So every nation has their own customs, culture, heritages, and traditions other than you and me. So now we're talking about reparation. Reparation for who? For the Negro? Because Negro is a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contained black water. Black, according to science, means death. Now, let me get to Loveville now. You know, Genealogy and Loveville saved the Moorish Science Temple of America. A lot of people going to be in a disagreement with what I'm getting ready to say, but I've been around a long time. The reason why I don't go traveling a lot right now is because we're trying to build some things up here in Portland, Oregon. And they don't need me riding all the way across the country just to take some pictures with somebody when there's no agenda. Or certain people is not invited to the dance. Because in order to have a meeting, certain people have to be sitting at the table. And one thing we know, those can't sit at the table to tell you got to go through the courthouse and get your paperwork. The other day I was in McDishman, and I got a call there. And I went there, and they had took our name down, the Moorish Science Temple of America. And they took the name down because there was a lot of people running around. They call themselves the counselor and the UCC, and they doing things with the government, and all of them is under investigation. So they want to look at our roster and look at the pictures of those that was in the movie. They said, no, these ain't the ones here. And the reason why we're not one of the ones, because the Grand Sheik here is Brother Lynch-Bey. And Brother Lynch-Bey sat with Pearl Ali and a lot of other brothers and sisters that were with Drew Ali. So the counselor and the UCC, all these things didn't come about till later on. So when you begin to talk about the Moorish Science Temple of America, what Noble Drew Ali did that nobody else did was brought us a nationality. He brought us a nationality because even dogs have a nationality. You have German Shepherds, you got Irish settlers, and you have Mexican Chihuahuas. There's a bloodline. So Drew Ali, sent to us by the great God Allah, brought us our nationality, and bringing us this nationality, hook us back up with the family of nations. This is where I got this from. I got this from those two brothers that I called. So now, let's look at this real careful. I taught it in the Sunday school, and I taught it to the Holy Day. Everybody keep talking about unity. I'm talking to you, Portland, Oregon. And before we could become in unity with man, we first must come in unity with God. And how do we come in unity with God? Genealogy said through carnal thoughts and words and deeds. Man tore himself away from Allah. He debased himself. So what we need to do is take this lesson that Genealogy gave us, study these lessons, and get that lower self out of us. I was telling the brothers in the temple Sunday that my house got broken into. And 3-4 people broke in my house. And the reason why they broke in my house was because they said, man, we can't get this dude, man. We try to get this dude to do everything that we doing, but we can't get him. We can't even get him to go on the strip club. So I said, I know we're going to get this chump, man. They said, what we can do, we're going to watch him, and when he leaves, we're going to go in his house and see what he got in there to keep this dude from messing with the things that we have for him to mess with. So I came home 5 hours later. And when I came home 5 hours later, you had Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and the beast. All 5 of them dudes were sitting in my living room. And when they were sitting in my living room, they had my humanity pamphlet in their hand. They had the questionnaire in my hand, and they had the Quran in my hand. They had all kind of literature that I had in their hand. So when I walked in the door, they looked at me and they dropped their head. So now I'm on top of the game now, because I used to say the devil made me do it. Every time I did something that diametrically opposed to what I was supposed to do, I said the devil made me do it. But now I got the devil and his mob sitting in my living room trying to understand why they can't get me to do the things that they done. And the reason why that is because of those two brothers that I just named, Brother R. and R. German Bay. Now, when I first met R. German Bay, see, we was blessed on that other end. And before I got real close to him, there was a brother by the name of C.M. Bay. C.M. Bay. And C.M. Bay used to be over there at Temple 21 in New York. And he used to be over there with Sister Franklin Hill. And Sister Franklin Hill used to be close to Sister Wilson Bay, who used to live on the colony. She was the governess down there. We had a lot of meetings. And Sister Wilson Bay used to talk to me about C.M. Bay. Matter of fact, this sister had orthopedic shoes on and looked real old. She was an old lady. And she told me that I should marry her. And she said, you should marry me and I can instruct your wives. And I say in my mind, okay. I say she's an old sister, and what she's really telling me that she needs some help. She's old, she's getting ready to leave this plane of things made manifest, and she needed somebody, and I understood that. But what my blessing was, when her and I used to talk about C.M. Bay, see, there was a brother by the name of H. Scott Ill. And H. Scott Ill was another brother that was out of New York City. And him and C.M. Bay and all them used to be together. But this brother, Scott Hill, went down Lexington, Kentucky. And he went down Lexington, Kentucky around 52, 53, 54, during that time. And when he went down there, he met a lot of brothers that out of Washington, D.C., G.S. Hatchett Bay, Wesley Walker Bay, Monday, a lot of different brothers that he met. So he started telling them about the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So when he was telling them about the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, they wanted to learn more and proclaim their nationality. So what transpired was they told him to get in touch with that brother over in Baltimore named Rufus German Bay, because he know everybody and he could put y'all in pocket. So when they did that, they got in touch with German Bay and asked him, man, we want to learn about the Prophet and proclaim our nationality, because we learned that we're not Negro, colored, and black. See, at that time, we wasn't even calling ourselves Negro, colored, black. We were just calling ourselves colored. So they called German Bay, and what German Bay did, he went to the Grand Body. And he said, we got some brothers in Kentucky that want to learn about the Moorish Science, Temple of America, and the Prophet. So at that time, they said, no, we're not going to take the Prophet into those institutions because he's not for there. So he said, okay, he asked for 3 or 4 more years. They kept denying him, so he broke away. He broke away and formed his own organization, crying when he did, because they were one prophet, one temple, and one nation. But what transpired from that was he bought the Moorish Science Temple of America with a spark. And one of the things that him and Lynch-Bey did, if it wasn't for them two, it wouldn't be a prophet's gravesite right now. Because during that time, all the Moors were drunk on things, the carnal things, because the Europeans said that they're going to make us not be who we supposed to be. And Genealogy said that the movement will go so low that you think it vanished from the face of the earth, and you will look up and see nothing but turban and feathers. And we understood that. We understand that whatever's going on in the Moorish Science Temple of America right now is the will of Allah, and it's going to have many advantages. And we have something that no other organization has. We have about 5 or 6 leaders that say they're in charge of the Moorish Science Temple, and say the only way that you're going to be saved is come through them. So Genealogy told us about that. But there's this brother that raised German-Bey. And his name was Cook-Bey. And he came out of Chicago. And I was so blessed the other day that I got in touch with one of his grandsons, Cornelius, who I've been trying to find out his whereabouts for the longest. His mother is Salome. And I'm back in touch with him now. But he told me this, and I've been talking about it for the longest time. He said they was in Sunday school one time. And his grandfather said something, and his grandfather's brother said something, because both of them had different understandings, because they was in Sunday school when the prophet was teaching. But when the prophet said something, they didn't understand. They didn't understand, or one of them understood, and another one had a different understanding. So what we learned here in the Moorish Science Temple of America, that everybody do not have the same understanding. The gifts of the understanding are the treasures of Allah, and he appointed to everyone his portion in what measure seems good unto himself. So when the Spirit is talking to you, it depends on where you are along the way, how you going to take in this Spirit. So now, we have this grave site back now. Everybody running through the grave site, but Clifford Jackson Bay up there in Chicago, through Lynch-Bey, Porter Hill, and German-Bey, they was able to put that the prophet grave site back up. Why? Because everybody running around talking about who in charge. I got the leadership. I'm in charge here. But guess what? They was talking last week about we need a convention center in the Moorish Science Temple. Man, we got one. Loveville got one. He got one for us. He got one right over there, Howe, in Chicago. And matter of fact, the Cook-Bey brother used to live right down there at the Star and the Crescent in the middle. So now he got us a convention center. We got one, only one. Everybody keep telling me where it's at. We got a convention center. And we ain't got no land, we don't have nothing. We got a Moorish home number 1. We have a Moorish home number 2. Show me another body that has that. But what took place was, that brother Jones Bey is the Grand Sheik now. The Grand Sheik of the Moorish Science Temple of America, under the leadership of C. Kirkland Bey, F. Nelson Bey, J. Blakely Bey, R. Loveville, and him. And right now, most of the brothers and most of the sisters that I talked to, it was R. Loveville that took them through. But see, what it is once you get a little knowledge, can't nobody tell you nothing, and then you want to run to the courthouse and run here, there, and everywhere. But what I've learned is this. Here in Temple 2, Portland, Oregon, we're going to get with all the Moors. We're going to go around, but the first thing we have to do is get our house in order right here. We got to provide for the people. We got to have jobs for the people. We got to teach the babies. We got to do all of that. So I can't talk about what leadership is doing because I'm right here. I'm right here in Portland, Oregon. Why you keep worrying about what somebody else is doing? Do your job right here. So I'm not concerned about what's going on around the country. I'm concerned about us right here. So what we have to understand is when you begin to look at this chapter, and when you begin to look at chapter 19, Jesus said some things right here. Jesus said, they put me in a tomb, and then I wrestled with the conquerors of men. He said, I conquered death. Stamped upon him in robes and brought immortality to life, and painted on the walls of time a rainbow for the sons of men. And what I've done, all men can do. And he said the gospel of the resurrection of the dead is not confined to Jew or Greek, It is the heritage of every man of every time and climate. He was here, a demonstrator of the power of man. And that's what I seen in those two brothers. I seen them opening up their eyes and said, now it's the day of righteousness. So now we say that the Moorish Science Temple of America ain't doing nothing, man. I had so many foes. Took John 18 years. It say for 18 years it took John to wrestle within these temple gates before he conquered self. So what the Moorish Science Temple of America is, it say know thyself. It didn't say know Joe. It didn't say no blow. It say know thyself. And he got two selves. You got a higher self and you got a lower self. The higher self is your good self. Your higher self is your God self. In the Moorish Science Temple, we say the higher self is human spirit, clothed with soul, made in the form of Allah. The higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life that breeds justice, mercy, love, and right. So we walk around all the time like the dry bones in the valley. We walk around thinking that we are living, but your thoughts make you dead. Through carnal thoughts and words and deeds, man tore himself away from Allah. He debased himself. How do you get close to God? In thought. Thought is the cause of law. In the beginning was not the word. In the beginning was the thought, and man thought the word. So now we're talking about spirit. Everybody keep talking about we are spirit. Yes, we are spirit, because it's not in flesh to think, and it's not in bones to reason. But if we are spirit, what spirit are we? You have carnal spirit, you got lustful spirit, you got human spirit, you have divine spirit, but what spirit are you? See, because once you begin to study the teachings of the prophets, you will find out those two spirits, you got to crush one and tame the other to that purpose. And for what purpose was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded? For the uplifting of fallen humanity. And how did the prophet begin to uplift the Moorish Americans? By teaching them to be themselves. Now we got a flag. Drew Ali went and got our flag, retrieved our flag from Woodrow Wilson. And the best part about all those brothers and sisters that was teaching us when we was coming up, when they was joining the Moorish Science Temple, that flag right there, the red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center, wasn't even being flown in Morocco. And the reason why in 1948 that those people over there who call themselves that, they came up with a flag. And the flag that they come up with is a hectogram. And this hectogram is a 6-pointed star. And this 6-pointed star, they say, is the Star of David. But it's crazy in my mindset, because that red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center is the Star of Solomon. And Solomon is the son of David. So how can the father and the son have two different flags? So when Allah sent Drew Ali, because we was crying in the wilderness, we had lost our nationality and divine creed, Allah knew the methodology that we needed to redeem ourselves from that which was lost. And what was lost? Your nationality. Right now, man, I'm telling you, we the only people that don't have a nationality. And once you proclaim your nationality, then most of the work is done. Drew Ali said you better do it, because you're going to need 16 secretaries when y'all get to running in the door. Because everybody on this plane of things made manifest this top-flight signs of nationality other than you. Topside planet mud, which is Negro, colored, and black. Now, brother showed me some paperwork the other day, and he had more than 101 questions. He had 100 and something else. And one of the questions was, said, what is a Negro? And he said, Negro is a 4-legged dog. Man, I got messed up about that. I was so hurt because I wanted to crush him. Because we know that Drew Ali said Negro is a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contained black water. But we know that river today is not in West Africa. It's today is in Brazil, because Brazil is a part of West Africa. See, and when you begin to understand it, it's a part of the Berlin Conference. when you look in the East today, most of those brothers over there that claim to be somebody else, they are Europeans with an accent. They are not the Arabians. Because when you begin to look at the Arabians, you're looking at me. Because Abraham couldn't have children. His wife couldn't have children, his wife Sarah. So he had a handmaid named Hagar, the Egyptian. And Hagar had a child for him named Ishmael. And Ishmael is the father of the Arabian nation. So now if you got a sister that's from Egypt, or if you have a sister that's from West Africa, and she have a child, that child is not going to look like Charleston Heston or Ricky Nelson. So this is the reason why people don't want to show a picture of Prophet Muhammad, because if you show a picture of Prophet Muhammad, he looked just like you and me. They don't want to show you a picture of Jesus, because if they show you a picture of Jesus, he looked just like me. So now when you begin to talk about spirituality, when you begin to talk about religion, because they said, why was religion instituted? You know, to teach you of thy weaknesses and to show you that from heaven alone are thou the hope for good. So here in the Moorish Temple, this might not be for everybody, because Genealogy said many are called, a few are chosen, and some are sent. So if this Moorish Temple of America teaches us about a religion, because I was telling the brother just this morning that if I voted for somebody for election, if they don't have the Spirit of God in them, they can't get my vote, because you don't know what you might do. But if you study the fruits of the Spirit, or if you study the Kalima Shahada, or if you are studying the highest principles known to man, then you might can get my vote, because I know there's some principles within your life. So now Drew Ali tell us to build a temple. He tell us to build a temple that cannot be made by hands. And the temple of man is the temple of God. And the temple of God, we have tools. You know, when you build a temple or you build a house, you have tools. And we have tools of the workshop of the mind, where things are made of thought and where we build up character. But you can't use the hammer when it's time to use a plane. You can't use a plane when it's time to use the saw. You got to use the proper tool at the proper time. And if you want to get close to God, you get close to God by doing what his prophet said. Now, in every era of time, like in the Bible, and when it talks about whenever a nation is in need for a prophet, said that in the Holy Quran, and it says, everybody said God will send one. And he's going to send one with the methodology that's conducive. So Drew Ali was sent by Allah. Now, everybody don't realize every 2,100 years, whenever a nation is in need for a prophet, Allah will send one. So now, who in this era of time did he send? Who told you about your nationality? Who hooked you back up with the family of nations? Who told you that you was Moorish when you know there's a history of a people that went into Spain, and you know when the slave trade started, it came through West Africa. The Ethiopians tell me all the time. You know, even though, matter of fact, the sister over there now, that's the president of Ethiopia, she's the great-great-granddaughter of Haile Selassie. I didn't know that. I just found that out through a brother. I used to say Abyssinia, because the Greeks named it Ethiopia, but the original name was Abyssinia. Just like when you begin to talk about the Trojan horse. It's a lesson in the temple too. Look at the Trojan horse, because that Trojan horse was given as a gift. But inside that Trojan horse was a lot of soldiers. And this is what we're going on in the Moorish Temple. And a lot of people keep saying, man, what temple is the right one and what temple is the wrong one? Well, everybody got the same Quran. Everybody got the same Quran. And the way that you can tell if a Moorish American is a Moorish American, if he's living the law, if he's walking that straight and narrow path. That's how you could tell. But guess what? I asked a lot of questions. I said, you need a constitution, huh? Yeah, I need a divine constitution and bylaw. I said, well, you might as well just write down Act 6. Because don't nobody want anything other than Act 6. They just want to use Act 6 to mess with Jubilee, to misrepresent the movement, and to do things that's diametrically opposed to what the law is. Jubilee was a holy and divine prophet. He brought us the Spirit of God. He told us to learn to love instead of hate. He told us to be in the world, but not of the world. And the way you're not of the world is to take these teachings and make them part of your life. He said that when Jesus was at the Last Supper with his disciples, he was feeding them food for thought. And whenever the Moorish Voice come on to talk to our Portland listening audience, that's what I give you, food for thought. Because when I was a child, and they used to talk about Jesus walking on water, it didn't fit my understanding. It didn't fit my psyche. And then when I joined the temple and started talking to the Bey, and he was giving me different understandings, telling me you could look at it different ways, because they say it's always 7 ways in and 7 ways out. But when we looked at the Bible, we was given to us from a perspective to look at everything literally. And you can't look at everything literally because of the Spirit. I just like that brother Loveville passed. One thing I knew, that he went on to another plane of life. See, because I said all the time, when somebody passed form, it depends on how you lived when you was on this plane of things made manifest, if you want to go through the spiritual plane or to the plane of soul. And if you haven't understood the lessons and overcame those lessons on this plane of things made manifest, you're going to have to come back. You ain't going up there, because Ali said in chapter 1, he said, many ages man can tarry until all his lessons are learned. And a lot of my friends, they're up there on the plane of soul. They're up there on the spiritual plane having fun and dancing. And me, I'm still trying to get myself together so I won't have to come back. I want to go on up there and be in the ethers with my mother and be in the ether with my father. I got to come back down here and complete this work down here. So man is not the body nor the soul. He's a spirit and a part of Allah. And the reason why Allah sent Noble Drew Ali to give us this, because these lessons here take you out of the flesh. See, because we are in the flesh. We are living in the flesh. We say that we are not flesh, but we do fleshly things. We do things that, like it said in the book, it says that in the book, good move, it was talking about overcoming and becoming one with your Father, God Allah. In order to do that, you got to overcome the 5 folds of man. Inconstancy, insufficiency of knowledge, misery, weakness. All of these are foes that we have to fight. See, we don't realize, you know how you're in a boxing ring and you're rumbling and you got a bag up there, but we have foes that come in our life every day. And they are hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms, and all the attributes of Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast. When Noble Drew Ali told us about Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast, he let us know that we're talking about attributes. And when you begin to talk about Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast, and look up the attributes, you'll find out that there was scheming, there was conniving, there was hatred. But what's above them all? He said vanity is beyond them all. I don't care what you go through down here on the plane of things made manifest, you got a lot of vain in you. And that's beyond them all. And he said, weep not therefore at the calamities of the human state. He said, rather laugh at his follies. He said, in the hands of a man addicted to vanity. He said, life then is but a shadow of a dream. He said, a hero, the most renowned of human character, what is he but the bubble of his weakness? The public is unstable and ungrateful. Why should the man of wisdom endanger himself for food? So now we're talking about the brotherhood. We're talking about the sisterhood. But who is a part of the brotherhood and who is a part of the sisterhood? Because I heard them over there talking about they was in church and they were talking about being part of the body of Christ. And they were saying that if you're a part of the body of Christ, you don't even become before their mother. And I understand Jesus saying that his mother ain't right, she can't get in the kingdom of heaven. And you know, when you look at your questionnaire Or when you look at your 7 acts, see, you see Drew Ali standing in the middle? It's so high, you can't get over it. So low, you can't get under it. So wide, you can't get around it. You got to go through the door. And you can't get through this door just with Act 6. You got to get through this door with Act 1 through 7. Because he just didn't give us Act 6, he gave us all of them. And you know what? When you look at Act 1, it said the Grand Sheik and the chairman of the Moorish Science Temple of America is empowered to make law and enforce laws with the assistance of the prophet and the grand body of the Moorish Science Temple of America. This is known as your Constitution. Act 1 is your Constitution. Act 1 is like the preamble to the Constitution. You know when it says we the people, form a more perfect union, etc., etc., that's your Act 1. And your 2 through 7 is the bylaws. And these are they that get you ready for the kingdom of heaven. See, a lot of us look for heaven in the sky. But Drew Ali said Allah never made a heaven for man. He never made a hell. We are creators and make our own. So now when you talk about Jesus, when you talk about Muhammad, when you talk about Buddha, or when you talk about Confucius, you are talking about the same reincarnated spirit that came in a different era of time. What I mean by that? Well, if we wouldn't have lost our nationality, it wouldn't have been a need for no Drew Ali. Because Prophet Muhammad had already came and said, Ilaha Muhammadah Rasulullah. And if he said, Ilaha Muhammadah Rasulullah, bearing witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is the last and the seal of the prophet. I met some brothers call themselves some kind of Moorish American. They over there tell me, Ilaha Muhammadah Rasulullah, when they need a nationality too. And if you say that, then you saying that Drew Ali ain't the prophet. If you say that or you go over there, you ain't giving Drew Ali his property. And Drew Ali ain't gonna get his property to nobody else. Because that's one thing that we don't want. We don't want you to have your nationality. But if you have your nationality, then you have a place on earth. You begin to study the attributes of your father and your mother. Because when you begin to talk about Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary, those are attributes. Just like Jesus. When Jesus and Joseph had Jesus, because they was married, and you look, you see who her mother and father was. So when they had Jesus, Jesus was born of virgin birth. Jesus was born of virgin birth because his father and mother and his grandmother was part of the Essene brotherhood. And the Essene brotherhood, these was they that was in the world, but not of the world. And the things of this world had no rule over them. So when you begin to look at Jesus, which means justice, and justice is dealing upright, equal, and fair. And it's hard to deal upright, equal, and fair because if I got a brother from the same mother, or if I got a sister from the same mother, and they was in an argument with somebody over here, and if the brother or sister that they had an argument over here was wrong, they're going to still take sides with their family. They say, I'm with you whether you're right, or I'm with you whether you're wrong. Now, what position do I supposed to take if my brother or my sister's like that? Because Drew Ali told us about the higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life that breeds justice, mercy, love, and right. There's right. So if I'm not honoring the right situation, going with somebody when I know that they're wrong, then who am I? What attribute am I carrying? I know it's Lucifer. I know it's Satan. I know it's the devil. I know it's the dragon. Or I know it's the beast because, you know, they told us that an angel had wings and that the devil had horns. And I thought about that and believed it for a long time, but I kept talking to myself. I said, man, you must be the devil. You must be the devil because you are doing devilish things. I mean, I sugarcoat it. I make it sound good, but if I do things that's other than what Drew Ali tell me to do, then I'm not who I'm supposed to be. You can't serve two masters at the same time. We tried. We tried when we straddled the fence. And all of us, you got to go through all the ways of life. You're going to go through trials and tribulations. You know, you're going to have ups and downs. But when you begin to master inconstancy, insufficiency of knowledge, weakness, misery. When you begin to look at that, then that stuff have no rule in your life no more. And this is what the Moorish Science Temple of America is all about. It's teaching us to be our higher self. Because the higher self is the mother of virtue. We're talking about virtue now. You know, when you talk about a virtuous woman, that's a woman with that kind of quality. So we talking about quality that's built in and not added on. So in the Moorish Science Temple of America, when Noble Drew Ali came and gave us these lessons for all those who love Jesus and desire to know about his life, his works, and his teachings. And this is what we learned in the Moorish Science Temple of America. So those brothers that I call, those brothers going to the agenda, because what they did when they was here, they lived a morally clean life and taught. There's other things on other levels in reference to everybody, but right now they kept the Moorish Science Temple afloat, because man, they want to do everything they can to get rid of this Moorish Science Temple of America. So drink turtle soup, and when you drink turtle soup, you'll walk a little slower, because the turtle don't move too fast. So it's always an honor, a pleasure, moreover a duty to come before our Portland listening audience to talk to you about the last prophet in these days and time, Prophet Noble Drew Ali. I'm just happy to be able to be back on here because it's been closed for a while. So I have a good subject matter for you next week, and I hope that you will tune in, because truth don't change. Can you be altered and need no apologies? At this time, I'd like to recite the Moorish American prayer, the source from which we draw our strength. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen.